Scotland have got shots to fire. They've got a fantastic back line. It's just whether Scotland can sort of withhold the power that France will bring off the bench. The England-Wales games have been eyesores, to be honest. They just tend to sort of cancel one another out.
Where Andy Farrell is sitting with Lions selections, would it be fair to say that up until last weekend, he probably had a hell of a lot of names penciled down, and then Ireland just absolutely crapped the bed?
I do think this might have just opened it up a little bit.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Six Nations Rugby wraps up this weekend. Joining us, Charlie Morgan from the Telegraph, to have a good long look at it with a particular focus on England, their season so far. Welcome back, mate. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we go into the final round this weekend, and it's brilliant that there are different scenarios that can take place. Obviously, France go in as favourites, but looking at England, a really difficult match that against Wales. I know Wales haven't won for 16 because always going there is bloody difficult for the Poms, isn't it? Can England win the Six Nations?
Well, it all you're bang on there. It all depends on France. France are in the box seat given what they did to Ireland, and they look absolutely awesome in that game. Sort of a historically impressive performance away in Dublin, one of the best that we've seen in the tournament away from home. So dominant, especially when they brought that bench on and pulled away in the second half. I think for England to be in with a shout is testament to how hard they scrapped in getting over the line against France, getting over the line against Scotland, and they've just been horrific in that fixture against Scotland, sort of in the last since 2018, since losing at Murrayfield in 2018. Had lost 4 in a row until they nicked that one at Twickenham, and there was a bit of luck involved in those 2 wins, for sure. That we're hoping Scotland now do them a favour, which I guess is in the mix. Scotland have got shots to fire. They've got a fantastic back line. It's just whether Scotland can sort of withhold the power that France will bring off the bench. So that game is last on what we call kind of Super Saturday, the last round where all the games are back to back to back. So it's likely that Ireland put themselves in as clubhouse leaders. They're against Italy first up, and they'll be smarting. They'll be looking for a convincing performance against Italy. You're bang on again as far as England have found it. The England-Wales games have been eyesores, to be honest. They just tend to sort of cancel one another out. There tends to be a lot of contestable kicking. And I think I'm right in saying that England need to really keep themselves in the mix of going ahead of Ireland, regardless of what happens. Well, if we assume that Ireland aren't going to get tripped up by Italy, England are going to need a bonus point win. Yeah. And they haven't actually managed to get a four-try win in Cardiff, I don't think, since 2003. So since the heady days of 2003, but that's how tricky it's been. And you're absolutely correct in saying that despite Wales being on this trot that they're on, England can't really take it lightly. If I thought that sort of watching the Wales-Scotland game, even as Scotland were pulling away, and Wales eventually came back and made it close, but even as Scotland were pulling away, I was thinking this is totally irrelevant, because no matter what happens here for the last weekend, Wales are going to find a way to make the last game really tight, really niggly. Yep. And we're going to see kind of, and we have seen improvements from Wales, and there is a kind of viable path to victory for them in this game. They'll have a scrum that I'm sure that gets on top at times. They've been, since Matt Sherratt's come in as head coach, they've been sort of more positive and more clear about the way they attack. So absolutely, England won't take it lightly, but for them to be in the mix on the final day is kind of testament to, I think, their improvements over the course of the tournament today. Look,
and we know enough about it down this end of the world. Obviously, you've got rivalries that are geopolitical and they're historical and everything else. But on the, Wales, this win against England can be the one that turns everything around, that stops all the losses, the best opponent possibly to win, and gives them all kind of hope then building up towards the autumn internationals and everything else. So there's a huge carrot at Cardiff for Wales.
Oh, completely. And you're right in saying these the sort of rivalries that go on. It's almost as though the teams match up with each other differently. So there's kind of, every year there seems to be, well, Scotland, this could be Scotland's year to knock off Ireland. And every year Ireland go, no, actually, they wiped that out very, very kind of straightforwardly, seemingly. With England against Scotland, we saw sort of what came out in the aftermath of that game. As I say, a really tight win for England was footage from sort of behind the scenes of England going, test weeks are special, but this week is especially special just because we keep tripping up against these guys. And you could almost feel the psychological weight of that inferiority weighing on England at Twickenham, and that's how that game became really edgy, and Scotland should have really nicked it at the end. Wales, there's a similar kind of thing going on. They seem to almost drag one another down into this dogfight, and not often very good for neutrals to watch, and maybe newcomers to rugby maybe steer them away from watching those sorts of games. But they are compelling in their own right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad. But you're right. Like if England, I think England are 12-point favourites with the bookies, which feels big, despite that run that Wales are on. But if they manage something like that, that would be a really satisfactory end to the campaign for them. Not just because in the mix they've lost Ollie Lawrence to a season-ending Achilles injury. You'd have become kind of familiar with him over the 3 games that England played against the All Blacks last year. He's a carrier that really gives their backline, the midfield, a lot of punch, and England is sort of going to have to move things around to reconfigure and rebalance their backline because of his loss. So definitely a banana skin. Well, calling it a banana skin would be sort of to disrespect the challenge that Wales were always going to sort of pose in this game. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult fixture for them to finish with, but given that they're on a run of 3 games, if they get over the line in this one, however they do it, I think it's going to be really impressive.
Yeah, I want to go back to that Ireland-France game in just a second. Just in terms, though, of where Andy Farrell is sitting with Lions selections, would it be fair to say that up until last weekend, he probably had a hell of a lot of names penciled down, and then Ireland just absolutely crapped the bed. France come roaring over the top of them. And it's that physicality which impressed us down here. The fact that they just beat them up in Dublin. And Ireland scored a couple of 42-13, there's a couple of garbage time tries at the end there. How much does that rearrange all of his thinking, or does he sit there and start rubbing names out and go, okay, well, I'll just wait till the final round before I decide?
Well, you never know. That's one. I love the term garbage time. And actually, England are only really in this title race because of 2 good garbage time tries in Dublin that got them a losing bonus points. So garbage time tries,
yeah, good point.
Not to be sniffed at.
Good point.
But no, absolutely. So we don't know for sure clearly what Andy Farrell was thinking going into this Six Nations, but the smart money and it was his prerogative to just go with these names that he trusted, go with combinations that he trusted, and actually make this basically an Ireland plus a few tour. Scotland's backs were always looking likely to sort of make up a few test places, and England a couple, Maro Itoje, maybe a Tom Curry if he hit form would have been in strong positions. I do think this might have just open it up a little bit, and I'm thinking maybe in positions like the back row, where you say it was really interesting. I thought Caelan Doris, the Ireland captain, gave an interview afterwards, and he was always a pretty honest, kind of quite eloquent speaker after games, and he just said, look, we thought we had the stopping power to sort of deal with what was coming with that 7-1 bench, and these we just weren't. There was Manny Miafu, who's the big Toulouse lock, made a huge difference. They actually had to bring on Oscar Jegu, that young flanker at outside centre, and he looked unbelievable. So he was really dynamic and really well balanced sort of in that position. And he also scored a try sort of around the fringes, like a really athletic, sort of stinging pick and go. But you're right, it was almost as though France fell down against England, and where they'll be kicking themselves. Obviously they missed. If kind of listeners have not seen the highlights of that game, they bungled a few try scoring opportunities early on.
Dropping the ball,
but also in the second half, they sort of they couldn't really deal with England's England brought on some replacements themselves, got hold of the set piece in the lineup, got hold of the area exchanges, where France were better in Dublin, where they they were just more accurate in those aerial exchanges, and from there they were able to exert pressure, and then the wave after wave, it felt like. Miaf was fantastic, George from the bench, fantastic. And they pulled away, and it was the one, looking at the sort of the lineups before the game with that 7-1, it's always a gamble, and for it to function and be the deciding factor despite France getting 2 significant backline injuries, really, really interesting, but absolutely testament to the strength and depth that France have with those forwards, and how exciting, those young guys are. Jagu was, as I say, a remarkable performance from him.
If you're liking what you're listening to and what you're seeing, people, click the subscribe button on YouTube. It helps us an enormous amount. Finally, Charlie, thank you so much for your time, mate. Okay, so just with a neutral cap on here, despite the many machinations and permutations that could exist on this, do you expect France to take care of business? It doesn't matter Ireland will win. That Welsh-England game could go either way, but do you expect at the end of the wash that France beat Scotland, however they beat them, and they become the Six Nations champions?
Yeah, I do. What would be nice is if it goes as deep as we can take it. It's been these Six Nations tournaments. You blink in mid-January and it's mid-March straight away, and they're gone before you know it. But what would be nice if it goes down as deep as possible, and we get maybe a kind of a resurgent Ireland, getting some fluency back, going well against Italy, an impressive England win, just to make sure that
puts the pressure on,
that France just to keep themselves keep themselves in it, and make France kind of almost hit that winner, if you can sort of bear that metaphor. But I would expect France to just have enough. It would be very intriguing if Scotland are accurate enough for long enough to take that game deep. That would be really, really, really fascinating, and that would be kind of a fitting end to the tournament. Absolutely.
This is the DSPN